Hello and welcome to the fourth video in our series of Virtual SG. Set D of the Tourist Guide Examinations, Clean and Green City. This itinerary begins and ends at Tourism Court at Orchard Spring Lane and is a combination of coach and walking sections. For the purpose of this video, only the walking sections will be covered. The theme of this tour is Clean and Green City. This tour stresses the transformation of Singapore into a clean and green city, with a particular emphasis on water. The first stop covers sites along the Singapore River, such as Raffles Landing Site and Kavanagh Bridge. The second stop transfers guests to Gardens by the Bay, the centerpiece of Singapore's city in a garden vision. And finally, the last stop drops visitors at Marina Barrage, symbol of Singapore's water story. Visitors are expected to be introduced to the Great Singapore River Cleanup, the Garden City to City in a Garden concept, and Singapore's road to water independence. Our story begins with the arrival of Sir Stamford Raffles on the Indiana in January of 1890 on behalf of the East India Company. From this spot, he established a trading port with which to receive and ship goods from near and far for the purpose of profit. The first ships would drop anchor off the coast in what is today's Marina Bay, but what was once open sea. And lighter boats would transfer goods between those ships and shore. The little shop houses opposite, which today house restaurants and bars, were once warehouses whose presence went all the way upriver into Clarke Quay and Robertson Quay. The East India Company being for profit and the port being a free port, the colony had no budget for sanitation. That being the case, as businesses grew and the population swelled, the river became the town dump. As the lowest part of its surroundings, all the waste that accumulated in town would be washed into the river with each tropical downpour. This turned the river black and devoid of life, debris, and waste collected on its surface. Everything that could be washed down was washed down, including the occasionally dead body. Needless to say, the smell was terrible, but Raffles' vision for Singapore as a major trading port was realized. For 150 years, life gave up on the river, and it seemed destined to stay that way until another man came into the picture. Singapore's first Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew decided he had another vision for the Singapore River: to be able to swim in it without getting sick. In the 1970s, he challenged leaders in the public service to get that vision realized in 10 years, promising them a gold coin if they could make it a reality. This was the beginning of what would become the Singapore River you see today. Everything pollutive was moved out, and sanitation and drainage disposal controls introduced. These controls included both punitive and reformative measures. Punitive measures included fines and community service terms for offenders. Reformative measures included anti-littering and anti-spitting campaigns. Most infamous of all, but rarely seen today, is the Corrective Work Order Scheme, where offenders are scheduled to undertake the embarrassing and tedious community service of picking up litter in the public. By 1984, the river was clean enough for the first brave souls to swim in. By 1987, when the river smelled good enough to party in, the cleanup was declared officially completed. This was also the same year that the River Hongbao Party started. It is a festival that runs during Chinese New Year, with concerts, shows, lanterns, and fireworks, and continues to be an annual affair each Chinese New Year. Away from the water, we now focus our attention on the land. The idea of Garden City has been tied to Singapore for more than half a century. It began in 1963 with Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew's planting of a mumpat tree. He said, "After independence, I searched for some dramatic way to distinguish ourselves from other third world countries. I settled for a clean and green Singapore." A massive government-led tree planting scheme that lined roads, car parks, and estates followed. Beginning at Mount Faber, tree planting became an official activity in 1971, replacing what would typically be ribbon cutting when new buildings were opened. The clean and green vision successfully transformed the built environment from bare concrete jungle to lush concrete jungle. as the trees matured over the years, so much so that Singapore earned the moniker of Garden City. "30 years passed so that in 1998 the policy was updated to the concept of city in a garden. Garden city versus city in a garden seems like a very confusing play on words, so allow me to elaborate further. In a garden city, greening comes as an afterthought. One would look at how to soften the impact of concrete and steel with plants and shrubbery. In a city in a garden, the garden takes precedence. The island's nature areas and park designs would take precedence over buildings, with the latter designed around these features. So, in 2005, before development took hold, in the Marina South and Marina East areas, it was decided to have a centerpiece set of gardens around which urban design would follow. That decision led to a $1 billion investment that yielded today's Gardens by the Bay, 101 hectares in size. For this stop, we will visit Gardens South. In particular, its three key landmarks recognizable the world over. They are the Avatar movie-like supertrees and the cool houses, the flower dome, and cloud forest. The supertrees are not really trees in the natural sense, but vertical gardens of green walls supported on a steel structure designed to resemble a tree. There are a total of 18 trees between 25 and 50 meters tall. These trees are a proof of concept for architects of buildings in Singapore. As guidelines for new developments require the implementation of such vertical gardens on buildings. It is possible to get a canopy view on the OCBC Skyway. In the evenings, the trees put up a coordinated light and sound show known as Garden Rhapsody. The Flower Dome holds the Guinness record for the largest glass greenhouse in the world. The 1.28 hectare space simulates the Mediterranean climate with a temperature of 24 degrees Celsius and humidity of 70%. Within the dome, one is able to see plants and flowers from 6 of 7 continents of the world. No prizes for guessing which continent is not in the picture. A large section of the dome has been devoted to giant baobabs, alongside succulents, icons of the desert. Another section is then devoted to the more leafy type of flora, starting with the gardens of the southern hemisphere and then the northern. Check out the Californian garden up the steps at the back, which contain a variety of fruit and vegetable plants seen on the dinner table. In the center of the dome is a seasonal garden plot, also known as the flower field, whose theme changes with the months. The cloud forest, the humidity level increases to 85%, simulating a tropical montane setting. While the dome is smaller in size, covering just zero point 0.8 hectares, it is taller than the flower dome at 58 meters. A highlight of this dome is the 35-meter tall indoor waterfall, which dominates the entrance. Until recently, it was the world's tallest indoor waterfall, a title now given over to its sister in the east, the Rain Vortex at Jewel Changi Air. Conditions here are similar to being 2,000 meters above sea level. At such elevations, plants develop adaptations to survive in the harsh environment of high wind, low nutrients, and cold. Walk amidst the top of coniferous trees at the treetop walk. whose key adaptation is having waxy needles in place of leaves. Also typical of tropical montane forests are epiphytic plants, which extract nutrients from the moist and fast-flowing mountainous air using aerial roots. Beyond the treetop and cloud walk, the top of the waterfall hides a secret garden of carnivorous plants whose adaptation is most popularized in the mainstream media. Pitcher plants and Venus flytraps abound with traps to consume the bodies of insects for survival. Perhaps the most impactful transformation in the entire Marina Bay City area is the Marina Barrage, our last stop. Located at a rather inconvenient location at the mouth of Marina Channel, this simple looking structure was designed with functionality in mind. It comprises a main building of 7 water pumps and a 350-meter long series of 9 water gates that separate Marina Bay from the sea. The effect of this structure is to create a freshwater reservoir with a rainwater catchment size covering 30% of the island. In operation since 2008, the creation of this reservoir achieved several objectives. First, it stabilized the once tidal nature of water levels in the bay, putting into history the once common occurrence of flash flooding due to heavy rain coinciding with a high tide. Second, the same stable water opened the bay to all-time recreational activities on the water, regardless of tide change. Such activities include sailing and kayaking. And finally, most importantly, the barrage created an additional source of water supply for the country's citizens. For a long time, and even today, the security of water has been a critical matter in Singapore. It is not often mentioned, but a major reason for Singapore's fall to the Japanese in World War II was a cutting off of supply of water to Singapore City. A person could survive without food for more than a month, but would not last more than a few days without water. More recently, water supply was often used as a bargaining tool with neighboring Malaysia. This is because 40% of Singapore's water is imported from Malaysia. As a result, Singapore has continually looked towards diversifying its sources of water. There are currently four sources in addition to the above, with the other two being reclaimed water from sewage, which is locally branded as new water, and desalinated water, which is water removed from the sea. Singapore's fourth water desalination plant is just across the channel, behind Gardens by the Bay East. Notice the open accessibility of Marina Barrage and Singapore's fourth water desalination plant, in contrast to the design of conventional municipal facilities that for security reasons are sealed off to public access. This design is deliberate, in line with the garden in a city concept. It is not enough for the government to be all in on being clean and green. In order for the movement to be sustainable, the citizens must also get in on the act. The design of the barrage, new parks, and facilities embrace this concept by allowing citizens to interact positively with structures, and therein develop an appreciation for the benefit of being clean and green. The green roof is one setup that is popular with picnickers, kite flyers, and newly married couples. The clean and green story is a story that is closely tied to the identity of Singapore as a city in a garden. In a small space of 700 square kilometers, it has made the city more livable not only for its citizens, but to its native wildlife as well. The importance of this key part of the city's urban design was underscored during COVID-19 when the world was in lockdown. Being clean and green will continue to influence the development of Singapore for many years to come.